He says, besides the tendency to yield to likes and dislikes, people fall an easy prey to the mind's attachment and possessiveness to worldly objects and beings. The human mind becomes deeply attached to the members of the family. The love spouses claim to possess for each other is actually attachment. The husband is attached to his wife, so is the wife attached to her husband. Attachment means love coupled with self-centeredness, selfishness. When a love is mingled with self-interest, selfishness, it turns sour. The mind then develops attachment, possessiveness, and spells disaster. Spouses attached, possessive in their relationship, caught in estrangement, separation, which invariably ends in divorce. So I've heard them say this any number of times. The cause of divorce is attachment. Now, there may be a range of other sort of extenuating factors and sort of, other causes which have come in and exacerbated the problem. But the fundamental cause is attachment. All the other pressures and factors which are coming in, they can be managed if we're not attached. The problem is that the presence of attachment means that all of the other factors, all of the other problems, all of the other issues cannot be managed. And so we say, irreconcilable differences. No. You will always have irreconcilable differences with another human being, unless you have the exact same mind as that person. Well, you're never going to find two people who have, the exact same mind. There's always going to be differences. We call them irreconcilable when we're unable to accommodate, and that comes from the attachment. So the whole idea of attachment is that there's another person. So he says objects and beings, right? So you can become attached to objects in the world as well. You become attached to your car, or you can become attached to non-tangibles like status or position. But we'll stick to people because that's the context of the paragraph. There is a sense of love, which is what? What is love? Another word that we often use to define love is identification. Right, so identification means that you identify with that thing. In this case, that thing is a person. You identify with them. Think of it this way. At the moment you identify with yourself, your body's going through certain things, it's happening to me. Your mind is going through certain things, it's me. Your intellect is going through certain things, it's me. You're identifying with yourself and your demands and your experiences. To identify with another person means that now you go through their experiences. So what it means is that whatever their physical, emotional, and intellectual experiences are, you partake of that. You, in a sense, vicariously draw their qualities and you enjoy them yourself. So you identify with that other person, beautiful qualities. He's upstanding, and she's very kind and compassionate, and this person's very smart and intelligent. Whatever. You've got these beautiful qualities. So you identify with those, you resonate with them, you partake of them. That's the love aspect. It becomes attachment when you say, I want. It's when you try to satisfy your own demands through that relationship. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have demands in the relationship. Of course you do. You get into a relationship because you have certain demands. If you didn't have demands that needed to be met by another human being, then there's no reason to get married. If you're perfectly self-sufficient without demands, then marriage is not a necessity. So the reason we get into a marriage is because we have areas of our personality that need support. And so there's a complementary, supplementary aspect to a marriage. So it's not that we should deny the reasons that we got into the relationship. What we're talking about here is the attitude while we're in it. If the attitude is one of, I'm trying to take from the relationship to satisfy my demands, then it becomes attachment. Right? So it's the idea of taking. If that's the general direction of your emotion, is to take, then it becomes attachment. The problem with this is, there's a number of problems. One of them is that when that person, for whatever reason, does not meet your demands, what happens?
Mental anguish.
Mental agitation, yeah. If that person doesn't meet my expectations and my demands, I suffer. That person just being who they are. That being is functioning helplessly according to their vasanas. And here I'm the one suffering because they're being who they are. It doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense when you recognize that it's my expectation, it's my attachment, I want. This context here is spouses. The next paragraph, he talks about children. We've used this example before. One of our classmates was discussing this idea of looking down at a newborn and saying, my life now has so much meaning and so much purpose. Now, there's nothing wrong with that feeling. But the moment you start to use the relationship for your sense of meaning and purpose, you're putting yourself in a precarious position. You are now susceptible to having that feeling turn into disappointment, turn into frustration, if the child at some point no longer needs you, which hopefully is going to be the case. Your job as a parent is to make yourself redundant so that I'm no longer necessary. But if you've become dependent upon that relationship for a sense of meaning, then when you make yourself redundant, you also make yourself miserable, empty nest syndrome. Or worse, you don't make the child self-sufficient, you keep the child in a state of needing you so that you can continue to fulfill the demand. Now, again, we've discussed this also. It's not that we've got, evil parents doing what they can to, take for themselves and I don't care about my children. It's not that at all. From the parent's perspective, it's genuine affection. It feels like love. I don't know if we've come across it yet, but in this text there is an example of there's an example of I believe it was a son in India, a bit of a prodigy when it comes to mathematics. He was able to, understand it in ways that people couldn't. So he achieved a scholarship to go and study abroad. The parents said, no, he's our only son. He needs to be here with us. He should not go abroad. This incredible opportunity to follow his nature, his passion, his love, in a place that would spur his growth, fully paid for, he should be with us. That's attachment. I want the son to be with us. I'm dependent upon that relationship for my sense of well-being. What happens then is they said no. He misses out. He's the one who suffers. Now, from the parents' perspective, it wasn't that they were saying, I don't care about my son, I'm just going to have what I want. From their perspective, it didn't feel that way. From their perspective, it felt like genuine affection. So attachment doesn't feel like something negative to us while we're in it. It just feels this is what love is. This is what relationship is. We only become aware that it might be negative when the other person ceases to act in ways that satisfy our demands. Then we get frustrated. But then, of course, what do? It's your fault. You're not being nice enough or kind enough or outgoing enough or X, Y, Z enough. We point the finger of blame at the other person and that there's the problem. Now, you may actually be correct. The person may not be living up to their obligations. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is that I am becoming frustrated and pointing the blame there, rather than saying, well, what is the cause of my frustration? That's the trigger. My partner being not X, Y, Z enough, that's the trigger. But the cause is my attachment. Attachment must therefore be something negative. If it's creating this disharmony in the relationship and it's creating negative emotional states in me, then it must, in a sense, be negative. But we don't look at that. So we've sort of got to recalibrate. We pick up passively from the external environment what attachment is, and we call it love. And we get it from friends and loved ones. They are attached to us, and so we learn, okay, this is what a spouse relationship is. We learn that this is the case, and if you're not satisfying my demands, there's something wrong, and there's a problem, and you need to sort it out. So we learn that. We learn it from external sources. Give us your favourite love song lyric. It's probably something that is talking more about attachment. Can't live if living is without you. Love hurts, apparently. All these ideas. Life began again the day you took my hand. Terrible, terrible, terrible lyrics. These are the ones that should be banned. Because what they're basically doing is they are celebrating a weakness. Now, okay, you shouldn't be too critical. There's a romantic ideal which is being conveyed fine, but the message that's coming across here is that if I can't be happy without you, then that's love. It's talking about an emotional weakness, lack of psychological self-sufficiency. So, the analogy we sometimes talk about is change the lyrics around and make it at the physical level. I can't stand upright unless you're there. I can't walk up the stairs without you propping up my spine. It's beautiful, isn't it?
I don't think it'd be a top 10 hit, though.
I don't think it'd be a top 10 hit. If you said, if you wrote a card to your beloved, or you're courting someone, I don't think I'll be able to walk properly. I can't carry my books to school unless you're there to help me do it. This is the way to a girl's heart. No, I don't want a weak man. I can't live if living is without you. I can't be happy unless you're near me. It's attachment. So we need to recalibrate. That feeling that we're having, that we're calling love, we need to recognize that it's something else. Like a lot of things in life. Just because we like it and it feels good doesn't mean it's good for us. So we've got to recalibrate. That feeling I'm getting, I have to now put that into the category of negative. Whereas I used to put it in the category of good. I've got to shift into a different category now and relearn that this feeling that I have right now, as pleasant as it feels, in this moment, I've got to start calling it unpleasant. How pleasant does it feel to scratch a wound that's healing? Fantastic, so good. Bad for you, bad for the wound, bad for the healing. How good does it feel to stew over a wrongdoing that someone did to you? Fantastic. Because when you know they're in the wrong, I was in the right, they were in the wrong, you know what he did? A sense of superiority. That thinking about him getting his comeuppance. Oh, delicious. All right? But not healthy. Lots of things are delicious and not healthy. So it's a matter of recalibrating our feelings and our emotions. So it's understanding what attachment is. Love that has been vitiated is the word he uses elsewhere by attachment, by selfishness. I want. So it doesn't mean that we don't allow our needs to be fulfilled. All right? Again, we're not denying ourselves the fulfillment of our genuine needs that we go into a relationship for. But it's the attitude that we use to relate to that person. If it's based on attachment, we'll suffer, we'll put pressure on the other person, and we leave ourselves open to disappointment.